Now, welcome to another Sunday commentary, which means I will be straying away from Star Wars just a little bit here, or perhaps I should say moving away from the more in-universe discussion and instead relating it to some real-world topics. So if that's not your thing, do feel free to skip this video, and I certainly understand if it's not. I talk quite often about how Star Wars should mainly be escapism, not used by and large to be a perfect reflection of the real world in order to make any kind of political or social statements. Not that you can't use it to some degree, but by and large it should be escapism. It shouldn't serve a sort of agenda beyond being motivational and or inspirational for anyone who wants to experience this other galaxy. However, and before you maybe want to call me a hypocrite here, that doesn't mean we can't look at the real world through the lens of Star Wars, that comparisons can't or shouldn't be made between the two from the other way around, you could say, especially when there are valuable lessons about the real world, intended or not, to be had in Star Wars. And I do think the line or lines from Return of the Jedi I want to talk about today can do just that. There is something to be learned from them. I'd even argue they are the truest or most relevant words spoken in the entire saga, or at least right up there with the likes of Anakin's "If you're not with me, then you're my enemy," or Padme's "So this is how liberty dies" with thunderous applause, though there are certainly plenty of other great lines as well. Anyway, you're probably by now wondering which lines I'm even talking about, so I'll play them without any further ado.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
And before even really starting to get into it, I have to point out that what's almost funny about these lines, about this exchange, is that they're kind of throwaway lines in the film, that they're really only in there to try and fix an inconsistency in the story. One that occurred because when George Lucas wrote the original Star Wars film, or as many call it today, A New Hope, he hadn't yet decided to make Darth Vader Luke's father, or that Anakin Skywalker and Vader would be one and the same. And thus, back in that first film, Kenobi not only talks about them like two completely and separate individuals, but even goes so far as to say this:
He betrayed and murdered your father.
And even though in the back of his mind during this conversation in Return of the Jedi, when Luke calls him out, Kenobi knows, or has to know, what he's saying is all kind of BS, that he knows he lied or has lied via omission, you might say, there is still probably a part of him that either truly believes or believes in what he originally said about Vader murdering Luke's father, that believes it was the truth, or that his truth or his point of view or interpretation of the truth was the only one that matters, because again, from his point of view, a greater good is being served here. I mean, someone needs to stop Vader and Palpatine for the sake of the whole galaxy, and that someone is Luke. He's probably the only one with any real sort of chance against them. Thus Kenobi and Yoda no doubt feel justified in, to put it bluntly, pretty much manipulating Luke to get him to do what they want or what he must do. They're using him to stop the Sith and save the galaxy from the Empire. And if ever there was a reason to tell the truth from a certain point of view and use someone, that seems like a pretty good one. However, I think we, the viewers, will all agree it certainly is not anything close to an objective truth that they're telling Luke, even if their intentions are plainly, I think, wholly and entirely good. And not even in the context of Star Wars itself could we call it that. Could we say this is anything close to the truth, even though, yes, the dark side exists in this galaxy and can corrupt and arguably destroy the good person someone used to be? We still can't say that Darth Vader murdered Anakin Skywalker, though. That literally did not happen, even though we can argue Anakin is, figuratively, not the same person anymore. This all leads to the interesting and perhaps morally difficult question of, do the ends justify the means here? Does lying to Luke or keeping the full truth about his father from him justify the possible end result of the Sith and Empire being defeated, the end result being a liberated galaxy? And I certainly think we could argue, yes, it does, that you can lie to someone to save the galaxy. But I'd only argue that if Yoda and Obi-Wan have a high degree of confidence or near certainty in Luke's chances of success, which you would hope is the case since they seem so intent, in Return of the Jedi at least, on Luke going to confront Vader again, like they somehow know the result will be positive this time, that he will find a way to stop the Sith and save the galaxy. I talked about this quite a bit in a video the other day, that you'd almost have to assume Yoda and Obi-Wan knew something here, that maybe they'd been granted a vision from the Force that shows Luke's victory, or with Kenobi being a Force ghost existing in a place that is non-linear, being able to see past, present, and future, that he can see the exact path Luke needs to walk to win this, and he's helping guide him down it. Otherwise, I have no idea what they actually expected Luke to do if they didn't maybe foresee the return of Anakin Skywalker, why they suddenly expected Luke to do better against Vader now than he did last time they met in The Empire Strikes Back, when Vader all but toyed with Luke the whole fight, to say nothing of how Luke would then eventually stop and defeat Sidious should he defeat Vader. And so without these two having some kind of knowledge about at least a potentially positive outcome for Luke, it feels like they're throwing him to the wolves and crossing their fingers that he'll figure something out. That they lied to him about his father in the hopes he'd find a way to kill him, to kill Vader/Anakin, and didn't care how Luke would feel after the fact, after one day learning that he'd killed his own father. Which then brings us to the irony of the whole thing, that Luke learning the truth that they refused to tell him is actually what leads to his victory. Learning the full story, hearing all the facts, not holding on to some dogmatic view of the Jedi, and instead coming to his own conclusions, making his own choices with all the information, is not only how he wins, but how everybody wins, how he saves the entire galaxy from the Sith. He didn't just look across at the other side and see Vader as a monster that needed to be stopped at any and all cost, but as another being that could be reasoned with, that could also, if their better nature was appealed to, could also let go of their own dogmatic views that they'd been convinced to believe as well. Luke believed that Vader could break free from this belief that he shared earlier in the film, and instilled in him probably by Palpatine, that he must obey his master, that he cannot simply turn and walk away from the dark side, even though those are the exact things he did when Luke simply gave him a chance, when Luke simply believed someone could be better. And everyone, Anakin included, you could argue since he was finally free from the dark side, ended up better for that decision. And look, in the real world, I'm certainly not saying we should make a habit of appealing to the better nature of monsters or truly evil people in the hopes they'll maybe have some sort of miraculous change of heart. Luke was able to save his father, yes, but there was likely nothing anyone could have ever done to turn Palpatine from the dark side, for example. We also know Anakin's full story, how and why he fell to the dark side. We know Palpatine took advantage of his anger and frustration with the way things were in his life, that he manipulated Anakin into seeing the Jedi as being the cause or fault for all of it, and that they were essentially evil, as Anakin himself says at one point. He literally says that from his point of view, the Jedi are evil, even though we, the audience, know that the Jedi, though not perfect in the prequel era perhaps, are indeed the good guys of the story, or at least they have the best of intentions. But Anakin truly believes the opposite. Or does he? Does he maybe still realize deep down that yes, the Jedi are the good guys with good intentions, but their intentions are simply not the best for him personally, and that the other side, the Sith, seem to actually care about him and his wants and desires, that they want to help him with his problems, help him save his wife, instead of just seeing him let go of all of that in order to help everyone else like the Jedi do. And so the easiest thing for him to do, for Anakin to do in order to justify his selfish and now evil actions, is to vilify the other side. He's allowed himself to do truly horrible things, to be an evil person, because he's been convinced by Palpatine, who has his own motives and plans, that the other side is worse and needs to be stopped, and that the means by which you accomplish victory over this other side be damned, because they are truly the bad and or evil ones. Basically, Anakin has become a pawn in someone else's game, a game he doesn't actually benefit from playing, and he doesn't even realize that or want to. He's been led to believe the cause and fight is his own, even though in the end, victory will not benefit him in the least. He doesn't end up saving Padme, and that it'll actually make his life worse than it ever could have or would have been if he just followed his own mind and his own path. But years later, when confronting Luke, at least at first, he cannot turn from his master. He cannot, or does not want to, admit that he was wrong all along, because people would much rather not only believe a lie, but they'd rather fight for it over admitting they were wrong. Hurting and attacking others, defending a lie, is somehow easier than having humility for some reason. Which brings us right back to Obi-Wan and Yoda in the original trilogy and lying to Luke and doing it with the best of intentions. Which again, we can certainly argue that with the fate of the galaxy on the line, they were justified in stretching the truth. But the problem is that line, a true justification, never ends at the fate of the galaxy, does it? For some, and I'm not just talking Star Wars here, it starts and stops with whatever truths they cling to from a certain, their own, point of view. More than ever today, not that it hasn't happened throughout history, but more than ever today it seems people convince themselves that their cause, or the one they've been led to believe by another, is so good and righteous that the truth is irrelevant when compared to it, that it's okay to withhold or misinform people as long as it leads to them doing what they feel is right, or what will serve this greater cause. The ends justify the means. Using people to make a better world is simply necessary in their mind, even if their version of a better world doesn't actually benefit the ones they're using, or isn't even their real goal sometimes. And just like Palpatine did with Anakin, convincing him the Jedi were evil, and Obi-Wan and Yoda did with Luke, withholding the truth about his father, they have no real interest in presenting anyone and or everyone on the other side as anything other than a monster with a horrible agenda, because humanizing them at all risks you, the one they're trying to convince, seeing an agenda other than the one they want you to have complete faith and confidence in. The full, plain, unfiltered truth free of any and all commentary from them is dangerous because it opens the door to you thinking for yourself, you having to think for yourself, and coming to your own conclusions, different understandings than the ones they need you to believe and fight for to accomplish or fulfill their own agenda, one that again maybe won't even benefit you in the end. I mean, just imagine if both Vader and Luke went into that final confrontation clinging tightly to the dogmatic views of the Jedi and Sith. If Luke believed the only solution was to kill Vader, and Vader believed it was impossible to ever break free from his master and the dark side, the only possible outcomes then in that scenario are Luke tapping into the dark side to defeat Vader and then falling to it himself, or Vader killing Luke and the Sith reigning supreme in the end. Instead, they both let go and realized that what was best for them was not to fight and kill each other, not to hold to these dogmatic views, and we can argue which ones are good and which ones are bad. Certainly, Jedi views are inherently better than Sith views, but to reject what they've been told and to seek their own solution that not only benefited them, but actually ended up benefiting everyone else in the galaxy as well. And again, I am not saying that there aren't some truly evil people in this world that can't, for better or worse, be stopped any other way than by fighting them. There are times when we must fight. Yes, the Force is for knowledge and defense, never attack, but sometimes you have no other option. Sadly, not every monster has a better nature deep down like Darth Vader did, and not every story ends like Star Wars. I'm also not saying all causes are bad, or that all people with any shred of power have a purely selfish agenda. Thankfully, there are plenty of good, decent people in the world that genuinely care about others and want to do good. I'm just saying that there are obviously those who will either intentionally be deceptive or try to manipulate you, or become so well-meaning or believe in their cause so much that they will feel justified in lying or misinforming people for that greater good, that they will literally think they're doing you a favor by doing the thinking for you and convincing you to fight their righteous battle against anyone who does not see it exactly as they do. And I do mean exactly, because some people become so fervent that they will try and convince you that other well-meaning people with different takes or beliefs, but still well-intended nonetheless, are literal monsters that must be stopped, or they will destroy everything you love and hold true. They will even try to convince you that your literal neighbor is an enemy because of perhaps the way they voted, when in reality you probably have far more in common with that person living next door to you in your own town, sharing a life similar to your own, than you do with the one living who knows where, trying to convince you that everything they stand for is wrong and evil when they just seem like your neighbor. Because, like you, your neighbor is probably trying the best they can for themselves and their friends and family in a world that can be harsh, brutal, and ruthless, that can chew you up and spit you out from time to time. A world where it'd actually be pretty nice to have someone you could trust and call friend, and maybe even rely on to lend you a hand from time to time who lives close by. You know, someone like a neighbor. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Hopefully my little ramble here will give you something to think about. And if you like my Sunday commentaries and would like me to do more of them, because I don't really do them all that often, I actually did create this channel to talk about actual Star Wars. Anyway, if you want more of them, let me know and I will see what I can do. Either way, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars or whatever else, just as long as we keep talking. And until next time, thanks for watching.